My dad's new stepdaughter bullied me. She didn't know I was her stepsister. My name is Amanda Harris, and I'm 26 years old. You wouldn't know it now, but there was a time when I felt invisible, like a ghost walking through my own life. A time when my family, the people who were supposed to love me most, made me feel like I was nothing. That day, my dad's wedding, was supposed to be a fresh start, a new chapter. Instead, it became the day I realized just how little some people cared, and just how much I could endure. Before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment, where are you watching from? At my dad's wedding, the air buzzed with excitement. Everyone looked so happy. I was walking towards the bridal suite, my heart doing a little flutter. My dad, he was finally getting married again. And to such a lovely woman, Sarah. She was kind, gentle, everything my mom wasn't, but everything I needed after losing her so young. I wanted this day to be perfect for him. For us. Then she appeared. A girl I'd never seen before. She stood in the doorway of the bridal suite, blocking my path. Her eyes, cold and assessing, swept over me. I tried to offer a small, polite smile, but she just sneered. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, her voice sharp like broken glass. I was confused. I'm going to see my dad," I stammered, feeling a sudden chill. "Your dad?" She laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed in the quiet hallway. "Honey, you look like you got lost on your way to a clearance sale." She mocked my dress, a simple, elegant navy blue that Sarah had helped me pick out. It wasn't flashy, but I thought it looked nice. Now, under her gaze, I felt cheap, exposed. She grabbed my purse, a small clutch, and looked inside. Her lips curled. "Is this all you have?" "Trash." She called me trash. I stood there, stunned, my mind struggling to process what was happening. I was at my dad's wedding. Why was this girl being so mean? Why was she calling me trash? She didn't know the woman she humiliated was about to be her stepsister. She didn't know I was Sarah's maid of honor, standing beside my new stepmom. She didn't know the first thing about me, but she had already decided I was nothing. And that, right there, was where my story truly began. I'd lost weight, a lot of it. The old me, the one in my dad's dusty photo albums, was a shadow. A girl with round cheeks and shy eyes, hiding behind long, unstyled hair. That girl felt like a stranger now. My hair was different too, shorter, styled, and a vibrant auburn. I'd worked hard to feel comfortable in my own skin, to shed the layers of grief and insecurity that had clung to me for years after Mom died. Sarah, my new stepmom, had seen that change in me, had seen a spark. She was the one who encouraged me to get the new haircut, to pick out a dress that made me feel good. She saw something in me that others, even my own father sometimes, seemed to miss. That's why her decision, her choice, meant so much. Sarah chose me as her maid of honor. Not her own daughter Chloe, but me. I remember the conversation clearly. We were at a cafe, sipping lattes, planning details. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "Amanda," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I want you to be my maid of honor. You've been such a wonderful part of my life, and you've helped your dad so much. It just feels right." My heart swelled. It was the first time in a long time I'd felt truly chosen, truly seen by a new family member. But that decision, that beautiful, affirming gesture, was also the spark. I knew Chloe wasn't thrilled about her mom marrying my dad. I knew she was a little bit difficult, but I didn't fully grasp the depth of her resentment until that day. Chloe was a few years younger than me, about 22, and always had this air of entitlement around her. She was used to getting her way, used to being the center of her mother's world. And now I was intruding. I was taking her place, not just in her mother's affection, but even in the wedding party. The whispers started, I'm sure. Chloe must have heard her mom's choice. She must have seen me around, a new face, a new presence. The girl who wasn't her, yet was standing closer to her mom on one of the most important days of her life. My new look, my newfound confidence, it all probably fed into her anger. She wasn't seeing the quiet, hurt girl from the old photographs. She was seeing a confident young woman who, in her eyes, had stolen her spotlight. And that's where the betrayal really began. It wasn't just about her actions. It was about the silent, simmering rage that had been building inside her, all because her mother chose me. It felt like a betrayal before she even laid a hand on me. A betrayal of peace, of the new family I hoped we could become. My dad, busy with wedding preparations, seemed oblivious to the undercurrents. He was just happy, finally. And I, naive and hopeful, walked into that bridal suite, utterly unprepared for the storm that Chloe had been brewing. Chloe sneered at my appearance, her lips twisted into a cruel imitation of a smile. "What are you doing here?" "Did you sneak in?" she spat, Her eyes, glittering with malice, swept over my dress, my hair, everything about me. Poor people like you don't belong at a $200,000 wedding. The words hit me like a physical blow. Poor, trash, wedding crasher. It felt like all the insecurities I'd spent years trying to bury were being dug up and thrown back in my face. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to speak, to explain, but no words came out. My mind raced, trying to make sense of her venom. This was my dad's wedding. I was supposed to be here. I was the maid of honor. Behind her, two girls, her bridesmaids, emerged from the suite. They looked just like Chloe, with their perfect hair, their expensive dresses, and their cold, judging eyes. They had their phones out, already recording. "Look what we found," Chloe announced to them, her voice dripping with mock amusement. "A stray," they laughed. Not soft, polite titters, but harsh, derisive cackles that filled the luxurious bridal suite. They circled me like vultures, their cameras flashing, their cruel smiles fixed on their faces. My humiliation grew with every click, every jeer. I felt trapped, cornered. The elegant room filled with delicate flowers and expensive champagne suddenly felt suffocating. I wanted to run, to hide, to disappear, but I couldn't move. My feet were rooted to the plush carpet. My voice was gone. All I could do was stand there, frozen, as they continued their assault. "She probably just wants to steal something," one of the bridesmaids said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Check her bag." Chloe, emboldened by her audience, took a step closer. Her finger poked my chest. "You really think you belong here? Look at you. You're an embarrassment." She snatched my purse again, not gently this time, but with a harsh yank. My hands flew up, but it was too late. The small silver clutch was in her grasp. "What's in here, huh? More trash?" she taunted. My face burned with shame. I could feel tears pricking at my eyes, but I swallowed them back. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. This was supposed to be a happy day. This was my dad's wedding. How could this be happening? The laughter of the bridesmaids, the flashing of their phones, the sheer cruelty in Chloe's eyes, it all swirled around me, a dizzying, suffocating vortex of pure, unadulterated victimization. I was completely alone, completely exposed, and it felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. She didn't just dump out my bag. She slammed it upside down. My small collection of belongings, my phone, a compact, a lipstick, and tucked safely inside, a silver locket, clattered onto the floor. My eyes immediately fixated on the locket. It was my late mother's, the only thing I had left of her that I wore every day. A piece of her heart, a piece of mine. It had fallen out, its chain tangled, landing just under Chloe's expensive pointy heel. "Oh, what's this?" Chloe drawled, her voice dripping with fake curiosity. She nudged it with her foot, pushing it across the carpet. "Looks cheap." My heart leaped into my throat. "No, please don't." I finally found my voice, a desperate whisper. I bent down, trying to reach for it, but her foot came down harder. She pressed her heel directly onto my hand, grinding it into the carpet. A sharp pain shot through my palm, followed by a dull ache. I gasped, pulling back reflexively, but her weight was firm. I could feel the pressure of her heel digging into my bones. Tears, hot and stinging, finally broke free, blurring my vision. "Get off me!" I cried out, my voice cracking. The bridesmaids laughed, their phones still held high, capturing every agonizing second. "Oh, is the little pauper crying?" One of them sneered. "So dramatic." Chloe leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. "You don't belong here," she whispered, her eyes cold and triumphant. Then, without warning, she straightened up. She grabbed a bottle of champagne from a nearby table, one that had been chilling for the bridal toast. Before I could even register what she was doing, she uncorked it with a loud pop and pointed it directly at me. A cold, sticky spray erupted, drenching me from head to toe. My hair, my dress, everything was soaked in sweet, bubbly liquid. It dripped into my eyes, stinging them. I spluttered, wiping at my face, feeling the sticky dampness cling to my clothes. The room erupted in more laughter. My elegant navy dress chosen with such care was ruined. My new hair, carefully styled, now hung in wet, sticky clumps. I was a spectacle, a joke. "Security!" Chloe shrieked, suddenly loud and theatrical. "Security! This woman is a dangerous wedding crasher. She attacked me. She's trying to steal things." Her voice, suddenly filled with feigned terror, echoed through the suite. My mind reeled. She attacked me? I looked around, desperate for someone to help, someone to believe me. But the bridesmaids were her friends, their faces alight with malicious glee. One of them, a blonde with a tight bun, even stepped forward, pretending to comfort Chloe. "It's okay, sweetie. We saw it all. Phones. So many phones? They caught every cruel second. The spray of champagne, my choked gasp, the fake tears Chloe now conjured. I stood there, shivering, sticky, and completely utterly humiliated. My hand throbbed where her heel had been. My mother's locket lay on the floor, now probably lost in the chaos of a security guard's arrival. This wasn't just humiliation. It was an assault. A complete, total destruction of my dignity, all for the amusement of a girl who hated me for existing. The cold spray of champagne was nothing compared to the chill that ran down my spine when I heard the snip. A sharp, distinct snip. Then another. And another. Chloe, a pair of glittering silver scissors in her hand, was cutting my hair. Not just a trim. She was hacking at it wildly, unevenly. Large chunks of my auburn hair fell to the floor, landing in sticky puddles of champagne. I froze. My body locked up, unable to move, unable to scream. The sound, the feeling of the cold metal against my scalp, the soft thud of my hair hitting the ground. It was surreal, like something out of a horror movie. My beautiful new haircut, the symbol of my new beginning, was being brutally massacred. The bridesmaids, even they seemed to pause. A flicker of something, maybe surprise, maybe concern, crossing their faces. The laughter died down, replaced by a tense silence. Chloe, her eyes wild, still held the scissors, a triumphant smirk twisting her lips as she surveyed her handiwork. My hair, a mess of uneven strands, hung around my face. I could feel the cold air on my scalp where it had been shorn short. It was the breaking point, the moment where my world, already shattered, felt like it was truly disintegrating. Just as the silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, a new voice cut through it. A voice I knew, a voice that was usually calm and comforting, now tinged with an edge of alarm. Amanda? Amanda, there you are! My new stepmother, Sarah. Her voice. It echoed in the small, chaotic room, stopping everyone cold. Chloe's triumphant smirk vanished. Her eyes, which had been so full of venom, suddenly widened in terror. The scissors clattered to the floor, her hand shaking as she dropped them. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since this nightmare began. Her gaze swept over my champagne-soaked dress, my mangled hair, my tear-streaked face, and then slowly, agonizingly, her eyes moved to Sarah, who now stood in the doorway, her beautiful white wedding gown a stark contrast to the destruction inside. Sarah's face, usually so warm and welcoming, was a mask of shock and horror. She took in the scene, me dripping and disheveled, Chloe, pale and frozen, the scattered contents of my purse, the wet cut hair on the floor. Her gaze flickered to the scissors, then back to Chloe, and finally settled on me, her eyes filling with a profound sadness and anger. The realization hit Chloe like a thunderbolt. The stranger she had attacked, humiliated and assaulted, was family, her mother's maid of honor, her new stepsister. Her entire body seemed to deflate. The bravado, the cruel confidence, all of it evaporated in an instant. The blood drained from her face, leaving her ghost white. She had miscalculated, terribly. The girl she thought was an unwelcome intruder, a pauper, was standing there, a witness to her own cruelty and, more importantly, a cherished part of the very family Chloe was trying to destroy. The room, which had been filled with her laughter and her friend's mockery, was now completely silent, save for Sarah's sharp, indrawn breath. The game was over. The consequences were about to begin. The girl I was a few years ago wouldn't have recognized the person standing in that hotel hallway. She was a ghost, a memory preserved in the slightly faded photographs my dad kept on his mantelpiece. That girl was heavier, not just in body, but in spirit. Her cheeks were round with the comforting weight of grief-eating, a sad but effective shield against a world that had suddenly turned sharp and painful after my mother's death. Her hair was long, brown, and lifeless, a curtain she hid behind, hoping no one would see the sadness in her eyes. That girl was me, but she also wasn't. She was a version of me I had fought tooth and nail to leave behind. Losing my mom wasn't like a switch being flipped. It was like the slow dimming of every light in the house. My dad and I were two ships passing in the night, both lost in our own fog of sorrow. He buried himself in his work, coming home late, his face etched with a permanent exhaustion that left no room for me. I buried myself in food and television, the mindless chatter of sitcoms a welcome distraction from the deafening silence of our home. We never talked about her. It was an unspoken rule. Her name became a ghost, too, floating in the spaces between us. He thought he was protecting me from the pain, but all his silence did was make me feel more alone. I was 19, and I had lost my mother and in many ways my father, too. My worth in those years felt non-existent. I was just the quiet daughter, the sad girl who lived in his house, a reminder of the life he had lost. The transformation wasn't a sudden decision. It was a slow, grueling climb out of a deep pit. It started with a walk, just one. I put on my old sneakers and walked around the block, my lungs burning, my legs aching. But when I got home, gasping for air, I felt a flicker of something other than sadness. It was a tiny spark of accomplishment. So I did it again the next day, and the day after that. The walks turned into jogs. The junk food in the pantry was slowly replaced with fruits and vegetables. I started cooking for myself, learning to nourish the body I had neglected for so long. For every pound I lost, I felt like I was shedding a layer of grief. It wasn't about being skinny, it was about feeling strong. It was about taking back control of the one thing I could, myself. Then came the haircut. For my entire life, my hair had been my shield. The day I walked into that salon, I was terrified. I sat in the chair, my long drab hair hanging down my back, and told the stylist to cut it. "Are you sure?" she asked, her scissors hovering. I nodded, my heart pounding. Cut it all off. As the long strands fell to the floor, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. I looked in the mirror at the girl with the chic, shoulder-length auburn bob, and I smiled. It was a real smile, one that reached my eyes. For the first time, I saw a glimpse of the woman I could be, not just the sad girl I had been. It was around this time that my dad introduced me to Sarah. He was nervous, more nervous than I'd seen him in years. He fumbled with his words, telling me he'd met someone. A part of me, the grieving daughter part, felt a pang of betrayal, but a larger part of me saw the light back in his eyes, a spark I thought had been extinguished forever. And I wanted him to be happy. I really did. My first meeting with Sarah was at a small Italian restaurant. I was guarded, ready to dislike her, but it was impossible. Sarah was warm, her smile genuine. She didn't talk about my mom, but she didn't ignore her either. She spoke about loss in a way that was gentle and understanding. She asked me about my life, my interests, my job as a graphic designer. She listened, really listened, in a way my dad, in his grief, had forgotten how to do. She saw me not as a sad relic of his past, but as a person. She told me my new haircut was absolutely stunning, and that my auburn color brought out the green in my eyes. It was a simple compliment, but it landed in my heart like a warm stone. Our relationship grew over the next year. We had coffee together, went shopping, and she'd call me just to chat. She was slowly, carefully mending the broken pieces of our little family. She helped my dad and me find our way back to each other. With her there as a gentle buffer, we started talking again, about little things at first, then bigger things. We still didn't talk about Mom, not really, but the silence was no longer heavy with unspoken words. It was comfortable. So when Sarah asked me to be her maid of honor, it felt like the final, beautiful piece of a puzzle clicking into place. We were at her house, a cozy place filled with books and plants, sorting through wedding invitation samples. She suddenly turned to me, her expression serious. "Amanda," she began, taking my hand. "I know this might be a little unconventional, but there's no one else I'd rather have standing next to me on that day. Will you be my maid of honor?" Tears welled in my eyes. Me. She was choosing me. Over her own daughter. I knew about Chloe, of course. Sarah didn't talk about her often, and when she did, there was a hint of sadness, of frustration in her voice. Chloe was in college out of state, living a life funded by her father's alimony. From what I could gather, she was beautiful, popular, and deeply resentful of her mother's new life. I'd seen pictures of her on Sarah's fridge, a stunning blonde with a practiced pout and cold eyes. She never came home for holidays, and she'd made it clear she had no interest in meeting my dad, let alone me. "Chloe, she and I have a complicated relationship," Sarah had once confided in me, her voice soft. "She's very loyal to her father, and she sees my happiness as a betrayal to him." I'd overheard a phone call once. I was in the kitchen, and Sarah was in the living room, her voice strained. "Chloe, please, just try to be happy for me." "No, he's a wonderful man. She's a lovely girl. You'd like her if you just gave her a chance." There was a long pause, and then Sarah's voice dropped, full of hurt. "That's a horrible thing to say." She hung up shortly after, and when I walked into the room, she was wiping her eyes, so I knew her choice to ask me was significant. It wasn't a slight against her daughter. It was a testament to the bond we had built. It was a public declaration that I was family. "I would be honored," I whispered through my tears. We hugged, a long, tight embrace that felt more real and solid than anything I had felt in years. That decision, made out of love and a desire to build a new family, was the spark that lit the fuse. Chloe, upon hearing the news, must have seen it as the ultimate betrayal. I wasn't just some girl her mom was dating's daughter anymore. I had a title, a role, a place of honor that in her mind was rightfully hers. I had, in her eyes, stolen her place. I had no idea of the depth of her rage, the poison that had been brewing in her heart for months. I was so focused on the happiness of the day, on the new beginning for my dad and the new mother figure I was gaining, that I was completely blind to the darkness that was waiting for me. I walked into that wedding, a different woman on the outside, but still that vulnerable girl on the inside, hoping to be loved, hoping to belong. And I walked straight into a trap that had been set not by a stranger, but by the girl who was, in a few short hours, supposed to become my sister. The betrayal had begun long before she ever laid eyes on me. It began with a mother's choice and a daughter's bitter jealousy. The bridal suite was an oasis of curated perfection. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a scene of expensive, calm luxury. A half-dozen champagne flutes stood at attention on a silver tray. A rack of shimmering bridesmaid dresses in a soft blush color lined one wall. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive hairspray. It was a room designed for happy memories, for joyful anticipation. I stepped inside, my simple navy dress feeling suddenly inadequate, my heart doing a little nervous flutter. I was looking for Sarah to give her a small, antique silver hair comb I'd found, something old and something blue. That's when I saw her, Chloe. She was standing with two other girls by the vanity mirror, all of them looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Their hair was an intricate cascade of curls, their makeup flawless. Chloe was even more striking in person than in the photos, with sharp, beautiful features and an aura of supreme confidence. She turned as I entered, and her eyes, a startlingly cold blue, scanned me from head to toe. There was no flicker of recognition, no hint of curiosity. There was only immediate, undisguised contempt. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet but edged with steel. The question wasn't an offer of assistance. It was a challenge. "What are you doing in my space?" "I'm Amanda," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm looking for Sarah." I held up the small gift box as a sort of peace offering. Chloe let out a short, sharp laugh. "Sarah, you mean the bride? She's busy. You'll have to wait outside with the other vendors." The word vendors hung in the air, a deliberate insult. The other two girls, her bridesmaids, smirked in unison. They were a perfectly matched set, both with the same polished, cruel beauty as Chloe. "I'm not a vendor," I corrected gently, a knot tightening in my stomach. "I'm her—" "Let me guess," Chloe interrupted, stepping forward. She circled me slowly, like a predator examining its prey. Her eyes raked over my dress, my shoes, my simple clutch. "You're from the groom's side, the charity side," her friends giggled. "My mother has such a soft spot for strays. I should have known he'd come with baggage." My face burned. I was speechless, my mind scrambling. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now. I had fantasized about meeting Chloe, about winning her over, about becoming the sisters we were meant to be. This brutal public assessment was not part of the plan. "You really think you belong here?" she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, loud enough for her friends to hear. "This wedding cost more than your entire life's earnings. See this dress?" She gestured to her own blush-colored gown. "This is custom Vera Wang. The flowers alone cost $20,000. This is a celebration for people who have class, who have taste. You just don't fit the aesthetic." One of the bridesmaids, a redhead with a particularly vicious smile, pulled out her phone. "Oh, this is priceless," she said, tapping the screen. A small red light blinked on. She was recording. The other bridesmaid quickly followed suit. Suddenly, I was on stage, the unwilling star of their cruel little show. "What are you doing?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. "Just capturing the moment," the redhead chirped. "A little behind-the-scenes footage for the wedding video. The wedding crasher, we'll call it." "I'm not a wedding crasher," I insisted, my voice gaining a desperate edge. "I'm the maid of honor." The words, meant to be my shield, were instead the very match that ignited the inferno. Chloe's face, which had been a mask of condescending amusement, contorted into a snarl of pure fury. "You? You are the maid of honor?" She spat, the words dripping with venom. The idea was so preposterous to her, so offensive, that she actually took a step back in mock disbelief. "My mother chose you over me?" Her eyes narrowed into slits. "Now I see. You're not just some pathetic stray. You're a manipulative little worm who burrowed her way in. You probably fed my mother some sob story about your sad little life to get her pity." The accusation stole the air from my lungs. Every kind moment I had shared with Sarah, every genuine conversation, every shared laugh, was being twisted into something ugly and transactional. "That's not true," I said, shaking my head. "Isn't it?" Chloe shot back, advancing on me again. Her friends moved with her, closing in. their phones held high like weapons. I was backed against a table laden with bouquets, the scent of lilies now cloying and suffocating. Look at you. You're a nobody. My mother probably felt sorry for you. She probably thought giving you a little role to play, letting you wear a nice dress for once in your life, was a good deed. A charity case. Chloe, please, I begged, my eyes darting between the three of them. I felt like an animal caught in a snare. The luxurious room had become a cage. Don't say my name, she hissed. You don't have the right. You think because my mom is marrying your sad, washed-up father that you're suddenly one of us. You will never be one of us. You are trash, and you don't belong here. The bridesmaid with the phone zoomed in on my face. Get a good shot of her crying, Chloe commanded. I want to remember this. My mind was screaming. Fight back. Scream. Run. But my body was paralyzed by a deep, primal fear and a tidal wave of humiliation. I thought about my dad, so happy downstairs. I thought about Sarah getting ready to walk down the aisle. A scene, a fight, would ruin everything. My instinct, honed by years of quietly enduring, was to absorb the pain, to make myself smaller, to just wait for it to be over. But it wasn't ending. It was escalating. They saw my silence as weakness, as confirmation of everything they believed me to be. They fed on it, their cruelty growing with each passing second. The heavy victimization wasn't just in their words. It was in their posture, their laughter, the way they held their phones, documenting my degradation for their own amusement. They were stripping me of my dignity, piece by piece, right there in that beautiful sunlit room, and there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop them. I was completely and utterly at their mercy, and they had none. The verbal assault was a prelude, a warm-up for the main event. Chloe's eyes, alight with a cruel fire, landed on the small clutch I was still holding, my knuckles white as I gripped it. It was my last piece of armor, a tiny shield in a battle I was hopelessly losing. What's in the bag, charity case? She sneered, her voice a low, dangerous purr. Did you manage to swipe a few silver spoons on your way up? Before I could react, she lunged forward and snatched it from my hand. The strap broke with a faint snap. She held it up triumphantly like a trophy. Let's see what treasures the little pauper is hiding. With a dramatic flourish, she turned the purse upside down and shook it violently. My world tumbled out onto the plush, cream-colored carpet. A tube of lipstick rolled under a chair. My compact mirror skittered across the floor. My phone landed with a muffled thud. And then, there was a soft clink as the most precious thing I owned hit the floor. My mother's locket. It was a simple, heart-shaped silver locket. It wasn't expensive or flashy, but it was my everything. My mother had given it to me on my 16th birthday, just a few months before she passed away. Inside were two tiny, worn photographs. One of her, smiling her beautiful, radiant smile, and one of a much younger me, grinning with a missing front tooth. It was my touchstone, the one tangible piece of her I had left. I never took it off, but I had put it in my purse for safekeeping during the ceremony, terrified I might lose it. Oh, look, one of the bridesmaids cooed, pointing at it with a perfectly manicured finger. Actual trash. A primal scream built in my chest. Don't touch that, I cried, the words tearing from my throat. I lunged for it, dropping to my knees, my only thought to rescue that piece of my mother from this desecration. My fingers were inches away when a sharp, pointed heel slammed down, pinning my hand to the floor. Pain, white-hot and blinding, shot up my arm. I screamed, a raw, wounded sound. Through a blur of tears, I looked up. Chloe was standing over me, her entire weight pressed onto my hand through the stiletto of her blush-pink shoe. Her face was a mask of triumphant glee. You really shouldn't reach for things that don't belong to you, she said, grinding her heel down. I felt a sickening pressure, the small bones in my hand protesting. I tried to pull away, but she was strong, her leg locked, her expression remorseless. The bridesmaids were laughing, their phones capturing the entire grotesque scene. Did you get that? One asked the other. The look on her face. Please, I sobbed, the fight draining out of me, replaced by agonizing pain and utter despair. Please just let me go. It was my mother's. My plea for empathy only seemed to fuel her rage. Your mother? She scoffed. I'm sure she was just as pathetic as you are. That was the blow that broke me. More than the pain in my hand, more than the humiliation, those words sliced right through me, into the deepest, most sacred part of my heart. A wave of nausea washed over me. Chloe finally lifted her heel. I snatched my hand back, cradling it to my chest, my fingers already starting to swell and throb. My gaze fell on the locket, still on the floor, now with a small dent in it from where her heel had grazed it. But Chloe wasn't finished. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on the ice bucket where a bottle of premium champagne was chilling. A wicked smile spread across her face. "You know, you look a little stressed," she said, her voice a parody of concern. "You should probably cool off." She picked up the bottle. The other girls backed away slightly, their phones still raised, their faces alight with eager anticipation. I scrambled backward on my hands and knees trying to get away, but there was nowhere to go. The cork exploded from the bottle with a loud pop, echoing like a gunshot in the tense room. And then came the flood. A cold, sticky torrent of champagne washed over me. It drenched my hair, plastering it to my face and scalp. It soaked through my dress, the expensive fabric turning dark and heavy, clinging unpleasantly to my skin. The sweet, cloying smell filled my nostrils, making me gag. I sputtered, wiping the bubbly liquid from my eyes, shivering from the cold shock of it. The room erupted in hysterical laughter. I was a pathetic, drowned creature kneeling on the floor, covered in their expensive celebration, while they stood over me, dry and perfect and cruel. As if on cue, Chloe's demeanor shifted in an instant. Her face crumpled into a mask of theatrical fear. She dropped the empty bottle, which rolled away on the carpet. "Security!" she shrieked, her voice suddenly high-pitched and panicked. "Someone help! This woman is crazy! She just attacked me! She's a wedding crasher!" My mind couldn't process the sudden flip. One moment she was the aggressor, the tormentor, and the next she was the victim, her voice ringing with false terror. The redhead rushed to her side, wrapping a supportive arm around her. "It's okay, Chloe, we're here. We saw the whole thing." She went insane. It was a perfectly rehearsed performance. They were creating a narrative, a lie that their video clips, cleverly edited, would surely support. I was the unhinged intruder. They were the innocent victims. As I knelt there, soaked and shivering, my hand throbbing, my mother's locket dented on the floor, and my dignity in shreds, I realized the true depth of their cruelty. They weren't just content to humiliate me. They were determined to utterly destroy me, to erase my truth and replace it with their own vicious fiction. The assault was complete. The humiliation was absolute. A strange calm descended over me. It was the kind of eerie silence that follows a massive explosion, when your ears are still ringing and the dust hasn't settled. I was on the floor, a heap of ruined navy silk and sticky, tangled hair. The pain in my hand was a distant, throbbing drumbeat. The laughter of the bridesmaids was a far-off echo. My mind had retreated to a safe place, a small, quiet room deep inside where their cruelty couldn't touch me. I was watching the scene unfold as if it were happening to someone else, a character in a movie. I saw the girl on the floor, me, slowly push herself up. I saw her eyes, vacant and numb, scan the wreckage of her belongings. My gaze landed on my mother's locket. I crawled toward it, my movement slow and deliberate, and picked it up. The metal was cold against my skin. I clutched it in my good hand, the dent a new permanent scar on its surface. It was a physical manifestation of the wound in my heart. Chloe was still in the midst of her performance, sobbing into her friend's shoulder, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She's dangerous. Get her out of here before she hurts someone else," she wailed. But her eyes, even through her fake tears, were fixed on me, watching, waiting for my reaction. She expected me to scream, to cry, to protest my innocence, to give her more drama to feed on, but I had nothing left to give. I was empty. It was then that I saw the scissors. They were lying on the vanity, part of a small emergency sewing kit Sarah had for any dress mishaps. They were small and silver, with intricate handles, meant for snipping a loose thread, not for destruction. Chloe followed my gaze. A new terrible idea lit up her face. The fake tears vanished, replaced by the familiar, chilling smirk. "You know," she said, her voice dropping to a low, menacing tone as she pushed away from her friend. "We're not quite done here. Your whole look is just a mess. Let me fix it for you." She walked over to the vanity and picked up the scissors. The metallic glint of the blades caught the sunlight. My detached calm began to fracture, pierced by a sharp spike of pure terror. This was different. This was a violation that felt more permanent, more intimate than anything that had come before. She advanced on me, the scissors held aloft. The bridesmaids for the first time looked hesitant. A flicker of uncertainty crossed their faces. This perhaps was a line even they were uncomfortable crossing. But they said nothing. Their silence was its own form of complicity. I tried to back away, but I was clumsy, still unsteady on my feet. I stumbled backward, landing in a heap against the leg of a chaise lounge. I was trapped. She loomed over me, the scissors snapping open and closed near my face. Snip, snip, snip. The sound was terrifyingly loud in the quiet room. "Hold still," she cooed, a demented parody of a hairdresser. "This will only hurt a little." She grabbed a handful of my damp, sticky hair. I flinched, but her grip was like iron. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing myself. Snip. The sound was shockingly final. A cold draft hit my scalp. I felt the weight of my hair shift. My eyes flew open. A large, wet clump of my auburn hair was lying on the floor. It looked like a wounded animal. Snip. Snip. She was hacking at it randomly, viciously. There was no artistry, only destruction. I felt the cold metal of the blades graze my ear, and I froze completely. My breath hitched. My entire body locked up. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. The sound of the snipping, the sight of my hair falling around me, the triumphant, focused look on Chloe's face. It was a waking nightmare. My breaking point wasn't a scream or a sob. It was this, a complete and total shutdown of my system. I was a statue, a doll being mutilated, and all I could do was watch. The world had narrowed to the glint of the scissors and the soft thud of my hair hitting the carpet. Time seemed to stretch and warp. In the deafening silence of my own shock, a new sound pierced through the haze. A voice. Clear and sharp and laced with confusion. Amanda? Amanda, there you are! I was getting worried. It was Sarah. The snipping stopped. The scissors in Chloe's hand froze mid-air. Everything stopped. The entire tableau held for a single heart-stopping second, like a photograph. Chloe, looming over me with the scissors. Me, crumpled on the floor, a mess of ruined hair and clothes. The bridesmaids, their phones finally lowered, their faces pale with shock, and Sarah, standing in the doorway, a vision in white lace and silk, her face a canvas of dawning horror. Her eyes took in the scene, the champagne bottle on the floor, the scattered contents of my purse, the scissors in Chloe's hand, the chunks of my hair littering the pristine carpet. Her gaze flew to my face, to my tear-streaked cheeks and my mangled hair. Then, her eyes, filled with a terrifying, cold fury, shifted to her daughter. Chloe's triumphant smirk didn't just vanish. It shattered. It was as if a mask had been ripped from her face, revealing the panicked, cornered child underneath. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her cheeks. She looked from Sarah's horrified face to me, crumpled on the floor, and back again. The puzzle pieces, which had been so clear in her twisted reality, were now rearranging themselves into a picture of her own making. And it was a portrait of absolute ruin. The stranger, the pauper, the wedding crasher she had spent the last 20 minutes tormenting was Amanda. The girl her mother had chosen. The girl her mother was looking for. The girl who was supposed to be standing beside her at the altar. The realization crashed down on her with the force of a physical blow. The scissors clattered from her nerveless fingers onto the floor. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The power in the room had shifted so completely, so irrevocably, that the air itself felt different. The game was over. Her world, built on a foundation of cruelty and lies, had just imploded. And in the center of the wreckage, her mother stood, a silent, avenging angel in a wedding dress. The silence in the room was a living thing. It was thick and heavy, pressing in on us, broken only by the sound of Chloe's ragged breathing. Sarah stood in the doorway, her knuckles white where she gripped the doorframe, her face a storm of emotions. Shock had given way to a deep, glacial fury that was more terrifying than any shouting could ever be. Her eyes were locked on her daughter, and in them, I saw not just a mother's disappointment, but a profound and absolute judgment. Chloe began to crumble. The defiant, cruel girl was gone, replaced by a desperate, terrified one. "Mom," she whispered, the word cracking. "Mom, it's not what it looks like. She attacked me. She's crazy. She ruined your wedding dress fitting. She tried to steal things." The lies tumbled out, clumsy and unconvincing in the face of the overwhelming evidence. She gestured wildly at me, at the mess on the floor, her movements jerky and panicked. Sarah didn't even glance at me. Her gaze remained fixed on Chloe. "You're lying," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I have known this young woman for over a year. There is not a single cruel or dishonest bone in her body. You, on the other hand, I see I don't know you at all." Every word was a hammer blow to Chloe's crumbling facade. It was then that the two bridesmaids, who had been frozen like statues, seemed to come back to life. They exchanged a panicked look. They were accessories, complicit in the entire assault, and the certainty of their own impending doom was dawning on them. The redhead, the one who had seemed the most vicious, took a hesitant step forward. "Sarah, Mrs. Thompson, Chloe wasn't feeling well," she stammered, trying to weave a new narrative. "The stress of the wedding?" She just snapped. "We were trying to calm her down." It was a weak, pathetic attempt to save themselves, and Sarah saw right through it. Before she could respond, two figures appeared behind her in the hallway. Hotel security. A man and a woman, both with stern expressions and professional calm, had clearly been summoned by the commotion. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" the male guard asked, his eyes quickly taking in the chaotic scene. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Chloe's eyes widened further, and she began to sob, real tears of self-pity and fear streaming down her face now. No, it's a misunderstanding," she cried, looking at her mother, begging with her eyes. "Mom, please, don't let them. It's your wedding day. Please tell them to go away." But Sarah's face was stone. She turned to the security officers. "Yes, there is a problem. My daughter and her friends have just assaulted my stepdaughter-to-be." The statement was so blunt, so final, that the air was sucked out of the room. The bridesmaids visibly flinched. Chloe let out a strangled cry. "That's a serious accusation, ma'am," the female guard said, stepping into the room. Her eyes fell on my hand, which was now visibly swollen and starting to bruise. She saw my ruined hair, the scissors on the floor. It was the other bridesmaid, the one who had been quieter, who broke completely. The dam of her loyalty, built on fear and social standing, burst. Tears streamed down her face as she fumbled with her phone. "It's true," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's all true. We filmed it." She held out her phone, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold it steady. The redhead shot her a look of pure hatred, but the betrayal was done. The first domino had fallen. "I have it too," the redhead admitted sullenly, seeing that the ship was sinking and it was every woman for herself. She, too, produced her phone. The security guard took the first phone and began to review the footage. The sounds of our ordeal filled the room again, tinny and horrible through the small speaker. Chloe's mocking voice, my choked sobs, the pop of the champagne cork, the final, terrible snip of the scissors. It was irrefutable. Chloe, hearing her own cruelty played back, seemed to shrink, collapsing onto the chaise lounge, her face buried in her hands. The turning moment wasn't a single instant. It was a cascade of consequences, a chain reaction of justice. It was Sarah's unwavering belief in me. It was the cowardice of Chloe's friends, who chose self-preservation over loyalty. It was the cold, undeniable truth captured on their phones. Chloe had built a world where her actions had no consequences, where her cruelty was a sport. But the walls of that world had just come crashing down around her, and she was buried in the rubble. She begged, she cried, she made excuses, but for the first time in her life, no one was listening. No one was coming to save her. In that moment, a strange clarity washed over me. I had every right to scream. I had every right to rage at Chloe, to tell her she was a monster, to list every single wound she had inflicted on my body and my spirit. A part of me, the hurt, wounded part, yearned for that release. But as I looked at her, a sobbing, pathetic heap on the chaise lounge, I realized that my rage would be a gift to her. It would make us equals in a chaotic, ugly scene. It would give her something to fight against, a way to frame herself as a victim of my anger. So I chose a different weapon: silence. I rose to my feet, my movements stiff. My hand throbbed. My dress was a cold, sticky mess, and I could feel the jagged, uneven strands of my hair against my neck. But I stood tall. I walked over to the female security guard, who was now speaking in low tones into her radio. "I'd like to press charges," I said. My voice didn't shake. It was quiet, calm, and clear. It cut through Chloe's hysterical sobs and the panicked whispers of the bridesmaids. Everyone looked at me. Chloe's head snapped up, her face streaked with tears and disbelief. She had expected a fight, not this cold, quiet resolve. This was a language she didn't understand. "Are you sure, miss?" the guard asked gently. "We can escort them off the property, and the hotel can issue a trespass warning." "I'm sure," I affirmed, my gaze steady. "She assaulted me." Sarah came to my side, her hand resting lightly on my back, a silent, solid wall of support. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and profound sorrow for what I had endured. She nodded at the guard. "Whatever Amanda decides, we support her." The process was methodical, almost surreal. The guard separated us. Chloe and her friends were told to stay in the suite while I was escorted to the hotel manager's office to give a formal statement. As I walked out, I didn't look back at Chloe. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing any more of my pain. Signing the official report was an act of profound liberation. Each loop and line of my signature felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. It wasn't about vengeance in the heat of the moment. It was about consequences, about drawing a line in the sand and declaring that I would not be a victim. This was my quiet revenge, not to sink to her level, but to rise above it and use the system she disdained to hold her accountable. When I returned, flanked by Sarah and the hotel manager, the bridal suite was a scene of quiet disgrace. Chloe and her friends were being escorted out by the police, who had been called to take the official report. Chloe wasn't crying anymore. Her face was pale and slack with shock. As they led her past me, her eyes met mine. They were empty of everything. The cruelty, the confidence, the rage. All that was left was a hollow, dawning understanding of what she had done. She had gambled her future on a moment of petty cruelty and lost everything. She was banned from the property, banned from the ceremony, banned from her own mother's wedding. After they were gone, an immense silence fell. Sarah turned to me, her eyes welling with tears. "Amanda, I am so sorry," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. "I had no idea. I never would have. It's not your fault," I said, my voice muffled against her shoulder. The wedding was supposed to start in less than an hour. My dress was ruined, my hair a disaster, my hand beginning to swell. "We can postpone," Sarah said immediately. "We don't have to do this today." "No," I said, pulling back, a new resolve hardening inside me. "We are not letting her win. We are not letting her ruin this day." What followed was a flurry of controlled chaos. The hotel manager, profoundly apologetic, offered me a room and the services of the hotel's on-call stylist. Sarah's wedding planner, a miracle worker named Maria, found a simple, elegant ivory dress in my size from the hotel's boutique. "A dress meant for an eloping bride," she said with a wink. The stylist looked at my hair, her expression one of professional sympathy. With a few skilled snips, she evened out the jagged edges, transforming Chloe's act of vandalism into a daring, pixie-like cut. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a stranger again, but this time it was a stranger I admired. Her eyes were shadowed with the trauma of the day, but they were also fierce. Her short hair framed a face that was no longer soft and uncertain, but strong and defined. My hand was bandaged, but I held my head high. I walked down that aisle, the maid of honor. I stood at my stepmother's side, my dignity not just intact but forged in fire. As I watched my dad take Sarah's hands, his eyes shining with love, I knew I had made the right choice. My presence at that altar was a testament to my resilience. Chloe had tried to erase me, to cast me out, but I was still standing. That was my victory. In the age of the internet, secrets have a short shelf life. Cruelty, even more so. I didn't know which one of the bridesmaids leaked it, or if it was a friend of a friend they had sent the clips to. Honestly, it didn't matter. Within 48 hours of the wedding, the video was everywhere. It started on a small gossip site, with the headline, "Bride's Daughter Has Epic Meltdown. Attack Stepsister at 200K Wedding." From there, it exploded. It was on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit. Every corner of the internet seemed to be watching my humiliation on a loop. The clips were brutal. They showed Chloe's sneering face, my terrified one. They captured the moment she stepped on my hand, the explosion of the champagne, and the final shocking snips of the scissors. Without the context of Chloe's lies, it was a raw, undeniable portrait of a bully. The internet, in its strange and often fickle way, delivered its verdict swiftly and unanimously. Chloe became the villain. She was dubbed Wedding Wrecker Chloe, the Bridezilla's daughter, and 1,000 other merciless names. Memes were made of her snarling face. People slowed down the video of her spraying the champagne and set it to dramatic music. Her cruelty became entertainment, a spectacle for millions of strangers to consume with their morning coffee. Her social media accounts were found, and she was flooded with a tsunami of hate. Her perfect, curated world of sorority parties and designer clothes was ripped apart by strangers who saw her for what she truly was. At first, watching it all unfold felt strange, almost like an out-of-body experience. I stayed home from work for a week, nursing my bruised hand and my even more bruised spirit. My dad and Sarah were a protective shield around me. My dad, filled with a quiet, simmering rage I had never seen in him before, handled the police and the lawyers. Sarah handled me, bringing me tea, sitting with me in silence and making it clear, without ever needing to say the words, that I was loved and I was safe. They tried to shield me from the online storm, but curiosity is a powerful thing. I watched the videos. I read the comments. Thousands upon thousands of them, from all over the world. And to my surprise, they weren't just attacks on Chloe. They were messages of support for me. That poor girl. The look in her eyes is heartbreaking. I hope she pressed charges. That's assault. Her new haircut probably looks amazing. The best revenge is looking better than your enemies. The quiet dignity as she just takes it. What a strong woman. Strangers were defending me, seeing a strength in me that I hadn't yet seen in myself. Their words were a balm on my raw wounds. While Chloe spiraled into public disgrace, forced to drop out of her semester at college, abandoned by the same friends who had filmed her downfall, I began the slow, quiet process of healing. The most potent symbol of my ordeal was my hair. Every morning, I would look in the mirror at the short pixie cut. The first few days, I saw only the violence of the act. I saw Chloe's sneering face, the glint of the scissors. I saw my own helplessness. But then, one morning, something shifted. I looked closer. I saw the clean lines the hotel stylist had created from the chaos. I saw how it framed my face, how it highlighted my eyes. It didn't look like a victim's haircut. It looked bold, intentional. It looked like a choice. So I decided to make it one. I went out and bought new clothes that suited my new look. More structured, more confident. I started wearing the bright red lipstick that had been in my purse, the one I'd always been too shy to use. The short hair was no longer a scar or a brand of shame. It became my armor. It was a daily reminder that something intended to break me had instead revealed a strength I never knew I possessed. It was a symbol of survival. When people who had seen the video recognized me on the street, and a few did, offering a quiet, "I hope you're okay," I didn't feel shame. I smiled, thanked them, and kept walking, my head held high. My story was out there, but I was no longer a character in Chloe's cruel video. I was the author of my own recovery. Months passed. The viral storm subsided, as all internet storms do, leaving behind a quiet landscape. Life settled into a new, better normal. My dad and Sarah were blissfully happy, their marriage a warm and gentle presence in all our lives. My relationship with Sarah deepened into something truly special. We were more than stepmother and stepdaughter. We were friends, confidants. My bond with my dad was stronger than it had been since before my mom passed. The trauma of the wedding day had shaken our family to its core, but we had rebuilt it on a foundation of honesty, support, and fierce, protective love. I thrived. I was promoted at work, my newfound confidence translating into better, bolder designs. I started dating a kind, funny man who loved my short hair and thought the story behind it. While horrific only made me more incredible. I was happy. Genuinely, peacefully happy. The legal proceedings against Chloe had concluded quietly. On the advice of her very expensive lawyer, she pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor assault charge. She was sentenced to community service, a hefty fine, and mandatory anger management therapy. I didn't have to face her in court, which was a relief. I didn't need that kind of closure. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, a letter arrived. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and the return address was a city I didn't recognize. The handwriting was a looping, elegant script. It was from Chloe. I left it on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I wasn't sure I wanted to open it. Wasn't sure I wanted to let her voice, even on paper, back into my peaceful world. Finally, with a cup of tea in my hand, I sat down and slid it open. The letter was 5 pages long. It was not the letter I expected. There were no excuses, no justifications. It was a raw, painful, and unflinching apology. "Dear Amanda," it began, "I don't expect you to read this, and I certainly don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I'm writing this because my therapist said I need to take full responsibility for my actions. Not for you, but for me. But she's wrong. I am writing this for you because you deserve to hear it." She wrote about her life, about growing up feeling like she was in a constant competition for her mother's affection after the divorce. She admitted her profound jealousy, how she saw me as a replacement, not just in her mother's life, but in her role as a daughter. "When my mom told me you were her maid of honor," she wrote, "something inside me broke. It felt like the ultimate confirmation that I had been erased. I built you up in my mind into this monster, this perfect, conniving girl who had stolen my mother. When I saw you at the wedding, and you were so quiet and gentle, it didn't fit the narrative I had created. So I had to make you fit. I had to make you the pathetic, worthless person I needed you to be. It was monstrous, and I was a monster." She detailed the events of that day from her perspective, not to excuse them, but to own them. She wrote about the shame, the public humiliation, and how, in a strange way, it was the best thing that ever happened to her. It had forced her to look at the ugly, hateful person she had become. I am in therapy. I am working a menial job to pay my legal fees. My father is disappointed in me, and my mother. I have broken my mother's heart, maybe irreparably. I lost everything, and I deserve to. I am so sorry for the pain I caused you, for the trauma I inflicted. I hope, one day, you are able to live a life so full of happiness that what I did to you becomes just a distant, faded memory. She didn't ask me to write back. She didn't ask for anything. The letter ended with a simple, "I am sorry, Chloe." I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. A quiet stillness. Her apology was for her, a step on her own path to recovery. It was something she needed to do, and I was glad she had done it. But my healing had already happened. It hadn't depended on her remorse. I never answered the letter. I never spoke to her again. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about telling someone they were absolved. It was an internal act. It was the choice to let go of the weight of anger and resentment, not for their sake, but for my own. And I had already done that. I had found my peace long before her letter arrived. My stepmother and I grew closer. My dad stood firm, and I chose my own happiness, my own peace, on my own terms. My new family was the one I had built with them, a family of choice, and it was stronger than I could have ever imagined. That's how I turned the worst day of my life into a turning point. That's how I learned that true strength isn't about never getting knocked down. It's about how you stand back up. I didn't let betrayal define me. I used it to find a quiet justice, and more importantly, a quiet peace within myself. If you've ever been mocked, underestimated, or betrayed, and still found the strength to heal and move forward, subscribe to my channel, like this story, and drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from. Your story matters.